All right, thank you to Amir for asking this question. I apologize for the lighting and the sound today, but I am where I am. He asked, so you learn to play each pattern in position, basically, right, or something like that, and that is what that is the goal of what I do when I'm woodshedding patterns like this. Is the goal is to be able to sit down and just play it in position, okay, and eventually to be able to do it in any of 7 positions, because that's what was laid out by my mentor, Reg. Watch his YouTube channel, Reg523 on YouTube. He he is the best organized fretboard individual I've ever encountered for just laying it all out in a way that makes sense, like a piano or something, without all of the garbage that we usually have to deal with on the guitar. If you want to understand the instrument, watch his YouTube channel and ask me questions is fine. But just understand, I could talk about some of the things I learned from him, but he is the player. I mean, he can play this stuff. So Reg523, I think, is the name of his YouTube channel. He hasn't been on it for a long time, but just feel free to ask me questions, and I'll try to do better at getting back. But yes, the goal is to play in one position. Now, how do you do that? Reg would say, learn to play, and learn the 7 positions, for one chord or one scale, and learn where the notes are, learn how things work. So he'd say begin with a major scale in 2 octaves, that's G major, um, 6th string to 1st string, learn it in 2 octaves, then do the same thing from A to A, then B to B, then C to C, then D to D, then E to E, then F sharp to F sharp. So that's G major, and the G to G, A to A, B to B, understanding is just a layout starting point. So once I know that, I kind of know where I am on the fretboard, okay? Just understand that you're learning geography of the guitar. You're learning where things are. And this is not, it's not a brain thing that you do math in your head and you think. This is teaching your fingers and your ears, but it's in relation to G, okay? Then you can apply, do that, understand, and you can go through, he's got a process, and if you're interested in that, just let me know, and I'll shoot the link for that. But it's on the Jazz Forum. But he has a whole process for just learn the fretboard this way, okay? Learn where the notes are first, and then do the same thing for the other scales and so forth. Now, kind of the next level of application, after you actually know where things are and you can play the arpeggios, the scales, things like that, then the next level is actual musical application, because we don't play from A to A and B to B and C to C all the time. We don't think of things modally, or we don't have to all the time, or we can choose to, play G major. We can play G to G in all of these positions as well. We can do things like that. So once you get to that next level of musical application, which is, Reg talks about it in terms of technical skills and performance skills. So performance skills is how do you apply music to what you can do technically, okay? So patterns for jazz is it's kind of getting over into that other area, because you're applying the same musical thing to multiple positions and things like that. So The way I approach learning a given pattern, let me just start with major, is when I couldn't play this stuff technically in every position really cleanly, what I eventually arrived at is you've got 7 positions. So there's G major. And I've got the things written out in that thread, by the way, that's in the original videos. But it's got the chord, it's got the arpeggio shapes and things. But that's the first one. And it's got 7 more positions. But for each position, the easiest thing technically to do, and the easiest thing for your ear, and this is more true the more complex the language you're playing. So like I'm doing Barry Harris stuff now, and I always go back to what I'm about to describe when it's more complicated, because my ears can hear it, and technically it's the same thing in each position. So I go through the cycles. So the first cycle is a cycle of fourths. So C, F, E flat, E flat. Reg always talked about doing this without looking. Okay? Now on all of those, I'm thinking of my 6th string reference, which for this pattern, in major, G is the reference. So if I know where G is, I know where G is, and I know where G is, based around a G major chord in this example, okay? So the next one, so I do that with all the cycles too, till I can technically, and I clean up my technique and go slow, really work on moving things as little as possible, and really clean up the technique. And you've got the time and the energy and the attention span, because it's just one pattern that's the same in every position. So just take the time and do it. The next cycle could be half steps. Okay, now I'm thinking about those notes. Half steps are useless if you go so fast that you can't actually think about what notes you're playing. It's just on the guitar. It technically it's not hard. So go slow enough where you can actually think C, D flat, D, E, F, F sharp, and so forth. So then I would do the same thing with whole steps. Then D flat, E flat. Again, this is real easy technically. It's all a brain thing, okay? So I'm using the fact that I have to think about letter names in the beginning anyway. I'm thinking about that. I have to think about the letter names is just kind of something to keep me engaged, where I can take something that would otherwise be really boring and repetitive to play the same thing over and over. So I'm kind of mentally engaged with the learning the fretboard, but at the same time, this is very technically easy because it's the same thing, okay? And that's true with anything. It's like the Barry Harris stuff, the really chromatic and harder stuff, it's the same thing. The next one would be minor thirds. Anyway, I'm still amazed that I can kind of do those without looking. I haven't done them in forever in minor thirds like that. But you get to where you can kind of play them and hear them. You get to where you can hear them faster than you can think about it. And then for me, it's always kind of a back and forth. I want to sometimes be thinking about the letter names and learning that, And at other times, I just want to play by, I just want to see what my ear can do beyond. And people, there's always a debate. You shouldn't be thinking. You should just be playing by ear. And well, no, you need both. I mean, both are very valuable. And somebody like Reg would say you should be able to always think about what you're doing if it's not that big a deal and you can really play by ear and you know your instrument. So he disagrees with most people on the jazz forum in regard to that. And again, I have to defer to the fact that he plays better than just about anybody I've ever seen play the guitar. So I always defer to playing. If two experts disagree about something and they can both play, it's up to me as a student to decide how are they both right, even though they're saying two different things that disagree. So that's my reconciliation. You need both, okay? If your ear is good enough and you're technically together enough, you should be able to think a little bit and it not be a hindrance. But you can also play by ear and not think at all and play on that unconscious level. So anyway, I cycle through, and then I would do the same thing with the next position. The next one's is here, okay? Now, my thought process in the next position, that's my A to A in G major. Reg calls it Dorian. He'd call that A Dorian. As a position, it's very contentious. A lot of people get bent out of shape over naming a position after a mode. The truth is you have to call it something, and most players call it something very arbitrary, like position 1A or position 2, and every teacher has a different label. And does it matter at the end of the day? When I play this, I'm thinking G major, okay? But it's no hindrance to think in my mind, this is what Reg calls a Dorian physical position. It's not a hindrance at all. In fact, it's an extra level of knowledge that you get for free by, instead of labeling it position 1A or 2A or some arbitrary, or what is it anyway, you'd call it what would you call it I guess it's a D form would be the equivalent in caged. But I mean, all of that it doesn't give you anything musically. Whereas if you learn that position is a Dorian, then you know all the theory of Dorian for free. You know, okay, Dorian has a minor third and a natural six, okay, a major six. That's the characteristic pitch, I guess, yeah. As a flat 7. But you know what's similar about Dorian to the other modes, because you're always starting from the second finger. That's why he calls it second finger reference. So anyway, I'm kind of chasing a rabbit there. But it's important to know that when you play G major from here, my second finger reference is A. So that's C, but I'm really thinking about the D. Yeah, G, F. I'm thinking about the G, and it's a good thought process. It's just great for learning the fretboard. So anyway, I just woodshed 7 positions. When I was doing patterns for jazz, to go through that process, I could, if it was easy enough, you go through 7 positions in one practice session. If you do it like that, you're playing one pattern in one position you're playing it 48 times because you're playing it 12 times for each cycle through. But you're playing it 48 times while being very mentally engaged. Okay, so anyway, I usually would play it through that way for a couple of days. Okay, and then once I knew that, then I would start working through in one position. And I would play the same cycles, but without moving up and down. And I apologize for taking so long to get to that. But that's the process for me, is work through things technically and understand them, and then start working through in one position. And I laid it out in the original, like, first videos at the beginning of the Patterns for Jazz. I think I have a playlist on there that's called Patterns for Jazz. And it'd be a couple of the first videos. But the way these things cycle is, you know, this. The F sharp to F sharp, if you're in G major, okay, is Locrian. F sharp, Locrian. This F sharp to F sharp position is the last one in the cycle of fourths. Once you go around the cycle of fourths again, you're back to Lydian, which is the bottom of the cycle, the way I'd see it. So the top of the cycle for me is in any position. So Patterns for Jazz, it was always around seventh position, but I'm thinking second finger, okay? So C is kind of what it's based around. Now, the top of that cycle, if I'm thinking of, so that's D major, okay, based on that shape. So then G major is there. Then C, F, B flat, then E flat, A flat. Then we're on back to the original pattern 4, whatever you call it, but it's that Locrian shape, as Reg would call it, okay? But William Levitt calls it pattern 4A or something, I believe. So it's one of the 4s. So, but that's the same fingering as D. So it's D, G, C, F. You know, they're and then by the time you get to D flat or C sharp, you're back. So. G flat, D, A, E, A, and then D was the first. Okay, so that's the whole cycle. So, you know, that's always my first one, is because I'm just laying it out. And in the beginning, I probably play them in the order of the cycle. And so my fingerings in most of those PDFs that I shared. And just know this, if you go on the Jazz Forum and look at the actual threads on this, the later versions included everything from the beginning. So at the end, it was like a 20 or 30 page PDF. But I tried to put the fingerings in orders that made sense. So I put them in the order of the cycle, you know, so D, G, just one note changes, C, just, you know, F natural, then to F has a B flat, you know, B flat has an E flat, and so forth. So it changes one at a time. Now, the same is true for second position, or was it third position? I think I eventually determined that third position, that's where your first finger without stretching would be. Or you can think of wherever your second finger is, it's the name of the position is 1 fret up from that, because the first finger can kind of change. So anyway, third position I think of as basing it around A flat, and I do the same thing, okay? So the first one is, again, that Locrian shape. So I think B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, F sharp, B natural, E, and then A, I've shifted down to second position, and I'm back to the Locrian shape. All right, so that's back to B flat. Okay, so F's the last one. So that's kind of the logic of it. There are no rules. You could do it any way that you want. I think one thing I've kind of arrived at now when I'm working through things like Barry Harris. I've been doing a lot of like just playing. Anyway, I'm not a good student, but I've been playing through a lot of those stuffs in positions. And so the way I think about things, I think about the second finger reference. So I've been playing in F, but in F, the first one is G. So if I think of everything as being G, A, B flat, C, D, E flat, even when I get to things where like there's an A flat, is your reference when you play B flat. So as a rule, I just use letter names. So if A is my reference for the F7 chord, then when I get to B flat, I'm still using A as my reference, but it's A flat. Okay, so you can do things like that. You just make the letter name be, play from one letter name, and you can play anything. So even jazz tunes that cycle through and have different keys. If you just give yourself a rule, and you're always going to base it off of C. So you got C and C sharp, or you could do the same thing with B. You can say, I'm going to base everything around B flat. And if I'm going to base everything around B flat, but if it's a G7 chord, my B is natural, so I base everything around that. So that's kind of a thought process I've kind of evolved to and kind of arrived at doing it for a while. Like I say, I'm a really bad student. I just, with everything that's going on now, I mean, who cares? I don't know. But the thing about the position thing that I described in the beginning is you really can just work on technique. And you can do this while you're watching television or something. Working out things that are complex on the guitar is maddening, and you can't do it without a lot of thought or a lot of noodling around trying to find the right place by ear, or a lot of really thinking about where things are. And to me, this process removes that. It feels like playing the saxophone or the piano. So way too long, but thanks for watching.